Welcome back as we continue this morning with our current message series, Sibling Rivalries from the Bible. Today we take a close look at a set of sisters, Leah and Rachel, as Jacob, whose sibling rivalry with his brother Esau we learned about last week, learns that what comes around goes around. Now, if you were here last week, or if you know the story of Jacob and Esau, you may remember that Jacob deceived his brother Esau out of the rights and privileges of being the oldest son in the family. And then, with Rebekah, mom's help, his mom, deceiving his father Isaac, he was able to receive another verbal blessing that was intended for Esau, which was a very special, almost prophetic blessing that was put in the lives of the younger ones in the family and the eldest son. So Esau's pretty angry at Jacob and actually wants to kill Jacob as a result of Jacob stealing these rights that were a part of being the eldest son in their culture. And so Jacob flees for his life. Now, Esau is, well, he's out of the picture now, so Jacob runs off. And Jacob goes to a country fairly far away for the types of transportation that they had in that day. And he goes off to see his mom's brother, Uncle Laban, hoping to find a safe place to live, and really just trying to get away from Esau. Now when he arrives, he comes across a group of shepherds who know Laban, and in fact at that very moment, Laban's beautiful young daughter Rachel is bringing her father's sheep to a place where the sheep would drink, a local watering hole for the sheep. And Jacob and Rachel connect, and Jacob greets Rachel with a kiss, which was common for their culture when you were seeing a relative you had not seen in some time. Rachel goes back and tells Laban that Jacob is here, and Laban is very excited to see his nephew that has come so far to visit with him. So Jacob sits down and he just shares with Uncle Laban the entire story and everything that has happened. And after hearing the whole situation, Genesis chapter 29 and verse 14, it is recorded that Laban basically says, "Look, Jacob, you are family. My home is your home." Now, John already read verses 14 to 30, so I'm just going to kind of summarize them while also helping to clarify a few things and then maybe dig a little bit deeper further into the story. Basically, Jacob falls in love with Rachel. Now, let me add here that although Jacob and Rachel were cousins, apparently that didn't make a whole lot of difference in this story, and none of the children in this case seem to have any abnormalities as a result of the status as cousins, so I'm just going to kind of leave that there. After a month of Jacob living with Uncle Laban and working for Laban with no salary, Laban approaches Jacob and he says, "Look, you've been working faithfully for me. I need to do something for you. How can I pay you?" And so Jacob asks for Rachel's hand in marriage in return for working for Laban. Now keep in mind that in the ancient world, marriages were usually arranged by the parents, and the parents of the groom had to pay a fairly significant amount of money, referred to or called a dowry, to the parents of the bride. And the idea was sort of an insurance policy, so that if the guy dies young or if he takes off on his wife, there's something for her to fall back on in a day and age where there wasn't a whole lot of, women didn't really have a place in society, and so they were sort of at the mercy of men in their family. So this dowry would help them if that situation arose. Well, Jacob, it just basically ticked off his dad, right? It upset his father. His brother wants to kill him. Isaac is probably not in a place where he's going to pay a dowry for Jacob at this point. So Jacob offering to work free of charge for 7 years was kind of his way of making up for not being able to pay a dowry. And so Laban and Jacob agreed that Jacob will work for Laban for 7 years, and then Laban will allow Jacob to take Rachel's hand in marriage. Now this is, however, is where the story, if you didn't think it was already a little bit different, this is really where it starts to get weird. After 7 years, it is time for the wedding. Now the wedding in their culture was kind of a 7-day process often. The first night was sort of the bachelor's party. Late that night, the bride would then be brought to the groom's house. the marriage would be consummated, and then everyone celebrated and partied for the rest of the week. Now, Jacob may have had a fair amount to drink at the bachelor party, and before the days of electric lighting did not realize that Laban actually brought Leah in to consummate the marriage. And he didn't realize that the old switcheroo had been pulled until morning. By that time it was too late. He had been intimate with Leah. That was considered a part of what made the marriage official and legitimate in God's sight and their culture. And so Jacob, the deceiver, remember I said what goes around comes around, had now become Jacob the deceiver. Well, Laban tries making excuses for why he did what he did. And he told Jacob, well, after all, it is our cultural teaching that the older daughter must be married first. And yet if this was true, Laban withholding the information for 7 years was incredibly deceptive. However, Laban told Jacob that if you will finish this week of the wedding, I will then let you marry Rachel next week in return for another 7 years of working for good old Laban. So the way that Laban makes sure that his older sister has a husband and that he gets another 7 years free labor out of Jacob in this deal for Rachel. Sounds like that Uncle Laban was quite the shrewd deal maker. Apparently runs in the family. Now I want to pause for just a moment and talk a little bit about polygamy. I can't skirt that one quite as easy as the cousins one. And we find polygamy occurring quite a bit in the Old Testament, especially among sort of leaders, kings. And so what's the deal with men taking more than one wife in the Old Testament of the Bible? Let me just say that while there was no specific command in the Old Testament against polygamy, it was still generally assumed to be wrong, and there were no cases, none, in the Bible where a polygamous marriage was a happy one. None. Now, historically, polygamy has flourished in societies where women had lower statuses, lower value, lower worth. They just weren't viewed as highly. The only way to understand polygamy in the Bible, really, is that it was an accommodation to the culture out of the stubbornness of the people. It was not God's perfect will. God allowed it. God even worked through it. But make no mistake about it, God did not approve of it. You know, we wrestle, even in our own world today, with issues and struggles, and how do we view this situation? How do we view that situation, this issue, that issue? And while I believe in my heart that we need to be very gracious about the way that we come across to others based on where they come down on some of these challenges of the day, when it comes to our own seeking God and understanding what His desire is, I think it's very important that we rely on God's Word and upon God's Holy Spirit that He has given us in order to try to understand what His will is for our lives. Well, moving on, even though Jacob gets tricked and cheated, he agrees to this second 7 years of labor, right, in order to also marry Rachel. Apparently he really loves Rachel. And while he will keep Leah as his wife, that was, it would have been considered very unacceptable culturally to try to go back, and that's sort of odd in our thinking, but that's sort of the way it was. But he is also willing to do whatever it takes to have Rachel, the one he truly loves, as his wife. And I want to add that while polygamy is still not God's plan, Jacob's commitment and perseverance do teach us something that I think we can draw from this passage. That is that the greatest accomplishments in life are worth working hard for and patiently waiting upon. I don't know about you, but when I got out of college, out of high school, I wanted to get that first job, and I wanted it to pay a whole lot of money, right? I wanted to. And I wanted to have everything that my parents and grandparents spent decades working for. I think sometimes that reality then begins to set in, and we begin to realize, oh, okay, maybe this is the start. And I will faithfully pursue it. I want to encourage those that may be in that place very early in life that your grandparents, your parents, they accumulated what they were able to experience in terms over a period of time. Even in the church world, some church leaders think that if we just open the doors, people should come in. Right? That's the way it was in the 50s and 60s. And they look at churches that have grown and made great impacts in their communities and reached many, many people with the message of Jesus Christ and wonder why a little effort and a few changes don't accomplish that in their church. I would suggest that in any area of our lives, great accomplishments come when we diligently work and patiently wait. Jacob had to work 14 years, basically, to pay the dowry for Rachel. Well, even though God worked through this situation, listen to the first half of verse 30. I think this is really important. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah. See, this is the heart of the problem with polygamy. The primary reason for the sibling rivalry between Leah and Rachel in this story. You can't give yourself completely to two people. Someone will always get the leftovers. I know it's hard enough, I'm going to pick on guys for just a moment. It's hard enough for us guys to figure out how to be a faithful and please our wives, right? Maybe not. You got that all figured out. You can teach me a few things so I can continue to grow and bless my own marriage and relationship. But someone will always get the leftovers in a polygamous situation. And from here on out, it is all downhill. So Leah is terribly jealous of Rachel's beauty. And she thinks that having children for Jacob will get him to love her too. And even after 4 boys, Jacob still doesn't love Leah. So she's trying to generate kids to win his love. And it doesn't work. At the same time, Rachel is having a problem even getting pregnant. And is terribly jealous of Leah because she's generating all these babies for Jacob. And Rachel isn't. Now, it's important to remember that in the ancient world, not being able to have children was perceived as basically a curse from God. So she cries out to Jacob in chapter 30 and verse 1, "Give me children or I'll die." And what does good old faithful Jacob, who supposedly loves Rachel so much, say? Jacob became angry with her, the Bible says, and said, "Who am I? Am I in the place of God? He's the one keeping you from having children. Go talk to him." Great. You remember Isaac, Jacob's father, who prayed for 20 years trying to have children until Rebekah became pregnant with Jacob and Esau. Not so with Jacob. My goodness, this marriage was a mess. And so Rachel gives her servant. She can't have kids, so she gives her servant girl, Bilhah, this is wife number 3, to Jacob. And again, this was culturally acceptable. If the wife can't produce, then she go ahead and they try with her servant girl, her associate, the one that kind of helps keep the house. Well, Jacob has 2 more children, boys, by Bilhah. And in chapter 30, verse 8, Rachel boasts that she now has victory through Bilhah over Leah. So now she's feeling like she's on top again. Leah now hasn't gotten pregnant in a while, so she gives her servant girl Zilpah, wife number 4, to Jacob, who has 2 boys by Jacob, and Leah gets all happy again. Now, then Rachel and Leah get into an argument one day when one of Leah's boys, Reuben, comes in with some potato-like plants from the fields, and Rachel wants some of them. And Leah just sort of spouts out, "You already took my husband away, now you're going to take my kid's food away too?" But get this, I'm still grappling with all this too. Rachel gets the potato-like plants as a trade for letting Leah be intimate with Jacob that night. It seems that you have to take a number at this point to be intimate with your husband, if his name is Jacob. And guess what? Leah has another child as a result of that night, boy number 5, and then later boy number 6, before eventually having a girl. Anyone else lost yet? Well, finally, God blesses Rachel with a son, Joseph, who ends up being Jacob's favorite. Playing favorites with your kids. Jacob, that got your mom and dad into a lot of trouble. And that will lead to what I'm going to talk about next week. the rivalry between Joseph and his older brother. So if you ever wondered how Joseph and the coat of many colors guy and all his brothers and how that big family came about, well, today you got it. That's how all those kids were generated. Now, this also brings us to another point of application that I think is very important in our story today. And that is that the sins, the actions of the parents can carry on to future generations. Basically, that just means that the consequences of parents' actions can linger. There can be impacts in the future. Abraham, remember Abraham, was intimate with a servant girl to try and get a boy to carry on a promise from God to have descendants. Now his grandson Jacob is doing the same thing. Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Esau's parents, play favorites, which intensifies the sibling rivalry between Jacob and Esau. Now Jacob plays favorites, which will soon intensify the rivalry between Joseph and his older brothers. Friends, God won't punish your children for your mistakes or for our mistakes. But the reality is, sometimes there are repercussions. Now, this is not a reason to let Satan throw guilt upon you for issues in the past. I want to say that right now. God does not desire for us to sit there and have guilt about things where we have not maybe lived every perfect ideal in the past. But the reality is, as we're reflecting and God is leading us into the future, we're going to strive to allow Him to guide our lives and to the best of our ability live the way that He desires. It'll not only make your life greater, filled with greater joy and blessing, but it even has the potential to bless your children, your grandchildren, and according to the Bible, even for many generations. Well, later, after Jacob and all of the wives and children leave Uncle Laban's farm, Rachel, quite a bit older now, dies, having a second child, another boy, Benjamin. As I reflect on this whole sibling rivalry and try to bring a few teachings out of that story for our own lives today, and it reminds me of the entire Bible story, the entire biblical account of all of these people that we look to as almost heroes of the faith. When you look closer, they had all sorts of issues and challenges and problems, and they made mistakes, and they weren't obedient to God at times. And God still used them in powerful ways. And I figure, you know what? If God can work through people in the past and make all sorts of mistakes and mess up at times, then hey, I figure He can probably work through me too. And that probably applies to all of us. So that's good. And why does God work through us in spite of some of our challenges and our stubbornness at times? Why does God keep doing great things in our lives and in our families and in our communities? I would say because He loves you and because He can. Why do we bless our own children with good things? Because we love them and we can, even though they mess up sometimes, right? And God looks down at us and He says, you know what? I know you're not perfect. It's almost a prerequisite to be used by God, right? People that aren't perfect and realize it. God says, I love you and I can. And so therefore, if you will trust me, I am going to bring joy and blessing into your life in the good times and even in the challenging times, because I love you and because I can. And I hope that you claim that, and as you seek to live for God, that you know you have a God that loves you and that can bless you and desires to bring joy and blessing into your life. I also hope that you'll join us. Next Sunday, we're going to kind of wrap up the sibling message series. We're going to talk about Joseph and his brothers. We'll be receiving communion, kind of kicking off fall here at Central Trinity. And I look forward to continuing around this topic for one more week together. I want to invite us to take a moment and just bow our heads in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for your goodness in our lives. I thank you, God, that you love us immensely. And that, Father, even when we aren't paying so close attention to you, you're still paying close attention to us. And thank you, God, for not giving up on us even when we fall short. Help us, dear God, each and every day to seek to open ourselves up to the lives that you have called us to live. And Lord, with your strength and by your grace, we will seek each day to live as you would have us live, to open ourselves up to the blessings that you would desire us to experience. And God, we invite you to use and guide and direct our lives because you love us, for which we're grateful, and because you can. Thank you. Thank you for pouring yourself out upon us. May we seek to spread that love into our friends, our family, our workplaces, our schools, our community, and our world. In the name of Jesus, we